Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you handed them the keys to your entire life? Today, I'm going to tell you about Sarah Mitchell, a woman who did exactly that, and how she turned her husband's arrogance into the most spectacular downfall you've ever heard. But before we dive in, let me ask you something. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city and the current time in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories reach across the globe. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Trust me, this one's going to leave you speechless. The envelope sat on the dining room table like a ticking bomb. Sarah stared at it, her coffee growing cold in her hands. The return address was from Peterson and Associates, family law attorneys. She didn't need to open it to know what was inside. Her husband James had already told her 3 days ago, standing in this very kitchen, straightening his designer watch with the same casual cruelty he'd perfected over the past year. "I'm filing for divorce," he'd said, not even looking up from his phone. "My lawyer says it'll be quick. You'll get what you're entitled to, which isn't much. I'd start looking for a place if I were you. Maybe something small. A studio apartment would suit your budget." Sarah was 35 years old, but in that moment she felt ancient. Not from sadness that had died months ago, but from the weight of knowing. From carrying secrets he thought she'd never discover. James Mitchell was a real estate developer. 42 years old, handsome in that corporate way. Expensive haircuts, whitened teeth, a gym membership he actually used. He was the kind of man who wore confidence like cologne, overwhelming every room he entered. They'd been married for 8 years. For the first 5, Sarah thought she was living a dream. Beautiful home in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. Luxury cars. Vacation photos that made their friends jealous. She worked as a senior data analyst at a tech firm, making good money, but James always made more. Or so she thought. But over the last 3 years, something shifted. James grew distant. Business trips multiplied. Late nights at the office became the norm. And then came the lies, small at first, then bigger, more elaborate, like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering mass and momentum. Sarah wasn't naive. She suspected the affair long before she had proof. But suspicion and evidence are 2 different things entirely. The breaking point came 6 months ago on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. James had left his iPad on the kitchen counter, unlocked. Sarah hadn't planned to snoop. She was simply going to move it to charge when a notification popped up. A message preview from someone named V, with a heart emoji. "Can't wait for this weekend, baby. The cabin is perfect. Just you, me, and no interruptions." Sarah's hands went numb. The iPad nearly slipped from her fingers. She opened the message thread. Months of conversations unfurled before her eyes like a script from hell. Photos. Pet names. Plans. Promises. The other woman's name was Vanessa Chin, 28 years old. Marketing coordinator at one of James's development projects. Beautiful, ambitious, and completely unaware, or uncaring, that James had a wife at home. But Sarah didn't scream. She didn't throw the iPad across the room. She didn't confront him that night when he came home smelling of someone else's perfume, claiming he'd been at a client dinner. Instead, she did something far more dangerous. She started documenting everything. Sarah had always been good with data. It was her job, after all, finding patterns in chaos, spotting anomalies in spreadsheets that others missed. Now, she would use those same skills to dissect her own marriage. She created a new folder on her personal laptop, password protected and encrypted. She named it Project Phoenix, because from these ashes she would rise. The first layer was easy. James had always been careless with his digital footprint. He used the same password for almost everything, a combination of his birth year and their wedding date. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. She logged into their joint bank accounts first. What she saw made her stomach turn. Regular transfers to luxury hotels. Charges at high-end restaurants she'd never been to. Payments to jewelry stores for pieces she'd never received. And then the really interesting transactions, large cash withdrawals every Friday. $5,000. Sometimes more. But James's official salary shouldn't have supported this lifestyle. His company paid him well, around $180,000 a year, but the spending she was seeing suggested double that income. Where was the extra money coming from? Sarah dug deeper. She accessed his work email, still using that same lazy password. What she found in the archived folders made her blood run cold, but also filled her with a strange sense of vindication. James wasn't just a successful developer. He He was running a sophisticated fraud scheme. He'd been inflating construction costs on his projects, billing the company and investors for materials and labor that cost far less than reported. The difference went into accounts belonging to Shell LLCs, companies that existed only on paper, registered in Delaware and Nevada. The emails laid it all out. Conversations with contractors who were in on the scheme. Instructions to his accountant, a shady character named Rick, on how to move money without raising red flags. Invoices for phantom expenses. Over the past 3 years, James had siphoned off nearly $400,000. Sarah printed everything. Every email. Every invoice. Every bank statement. Her home office became a command center, walls covered with timelines, transaction histories, and evidence boards that would make a federal prosecutor proud. But she wasn't done. She needed to understand the full picture. Next, she focused on their assets. The house they lived in, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Cherry Creek, was purchased 7 years ago. The down payment had come from Sarah's inheritance after her father passed away. $80,000 from his life insurance policy. James had convinced her to put the money in his name for tax purposes. She'd been so in love, so trusting. Now, that trust was weaponized against her. But Sarah had kept records. She'd always been meticulous about finances, even when she thought their marriage was solid. She found the bank statements showing the transfer from her inheritance account to James's business account, then to the title company. She found the closing documents with her signature next to his. She found emails where James explicitly acknowledged the source of the down payment. The house wasn't just his property, like he claimed. It was bought with her money. Then came the mortgage payments. For 7 years, they'd been splitting the monthly payment 50-50. Or so James told her. Sarah had been transferring $1,800 every month to their joint account, believing it covered her half. But when she pulled the actual mortgage statements, she discovered something infuriating. The monthly payment was only $2,400. James had been telling her it was $3,600. For 7 years, he'd been pocketing an extra $900 every single month, her money, while making her think she was contributing equally. That was over $75,000 he'd essentially stolen from her. Sarah's hands shook as she documented this discovery. Not from fear. From rage. Cold, calculated rage. She expanded her investigation to Vanessa. If James was spending their money on his mistress, Sarah wanted to know exactly how much. Vanessa's Instagram was public, a gallery of luxury and excess. Photos from Aspen, Cabo, Miami, always tagged with locations that matched James's business trip schedule. Designer handbags, expensive jewelry. In one photo from 2 months ago, Vanessa wore a diamond tennis bracelet. The caption read, "When he knows exactly what you like. Blessed and grateful." Sarah found the receipt in James's email. The bracelet cost $12,000. She cross-referenced every one of Vanessa's posts with James's credit card statements and travel records. The pattern was undeniable. Every romantic getaway Vanessa documented matched a charge on their joint credit card that James claimed was for client development. The Ritz-Carlton in Aspen. The St. Regis in Miami. 5-star restaurants. Private yacht rentals. Over 18 months, James had spent $93,000 on his affair. But perhaps the most damaging discovery came from an unlikely source. James's text messages with his best friend, Kyle. Sarah found them backed up in his iCloud, which was still linked to their shared iPad. The messages were brazen, disgusting, and legally devastating. "James, Sarah's so clueless. She thinks I'm working late. Meanwhile, I'm at the penthouse with V. Life is good, brother. Kyle, divorce is expensive, man. You sure you want to go there? James, already talked to my lawyer. He says I'll keep the house, my business accounts, everything." Sarah gets nothing. She hasn't worked full-time in years, just that cushy remote job. Judge will see I'm the breadwinner. She can find a cheaper place to live. Maybe her mom's basement. Kyle, cold-blooded. James, strategic. I built this life. She just enjoyed the ride. Sarah took screenshots of everything. Each message was another nail in James's coffin. For 3 months, she worked in secret. She consulted with forensic accountants online, read family law forums, and studied Colorado's equitable distribution laws. She learned about dissipation of marital assets, about fraud, about how courts handle hidden income and extramarital spending. She was building a case that would destroy him, but she needed the right lawyer. Someone who wouldn't just fight for a settlement. Someone who would go for the throat. Her colleague at work recommended Catherine Reeves. She's a pit bull in pearls, her colleague said. Expensive, but worth every penny. She doesn't lose. The first consultation was scheduled for a Monday morning. Sarah walked into the sleek downtown office carrying a briefcase that weighed 15 pounds, packed with organized evidence, indexed and cross-referenced. Catherine Reeves was 58, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes like a hawk. She wore a burgundy suit and pearl earrings. She looked like someone's elegant aunt, right until she spoke. "Tell me everything," Catherine said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Sarah did. For 90 minutes, she laid out the entire case. The affair, the fraud, the stolen inheritance, the hidden income, the dissipated assets. When she finished, she opened her briefcase and placed the evidence folders on Catherine's desk. The lawyer flipped through them slowly, her expression never changing. But Sarah noticed her grip tighten on certain pages. The text messages, the bank statements, the emails detailing the fraud. Finally, Catherine looked up. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, and there was something almost like admiration in her voice. "In 30 years of practice, I have never seen a client come to me this prepared. This isn't just evidence. This is a prosecution file. Can you help me?" Sarah asked. Catherine smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a chess player who'd just seen checkmate in 3 moves. "Help you? My dear, I'm going to enjoy this." The morning of the hearing arrived with crystalline clarity. No clouds, just piercing Colorado blue sky and thin mountain air that made everything feel sharp and real. Sarah woke at 5:30. She didn't need an alarm. She'd barely slept, running through scenarios in her mind, but she felt strangely calm. Focused. She dressed carefully. A charcoal gray pantsuit, professional but not submissive. Pearl studs in her ears, a gift from her late father. Her dark hair pulled back in a neat French twist. Minimal makeup. She wanted to look like exactly what she was, a competent professional who had her affairs in order. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back wasn't the trusting wife who'd believed every lie. This woman had steel in her spine. Catherine had coached her extensively. "Let him talk," she'd said. "Let him be arrogant. Let him perform. Every word of overconfidence is rope for him to hang himself with." Sarah arrived at the Denver County Courthouse 30 minutes early. Catherine was already there, standing by the entrance in her signature pearls and a navy suit that screamed expensive competence. "Ready?" Catherine asked, squeezing Sarah's shoulder. "More than ready," Sarah replied. They walked through security and up to the 3rd floor. As they approached courtroom 3B, Sarah saw him. James stood near the courtroom doors looking like he was attending a business luncheon, not a divorce hearing. Charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, gold cufflinks catching the fluorescent light. His lawyer, Martin Webb, stood beside him, a man in his 50s known for aggressive tactics and connections to half the judges in Denver. And there, clinging to James's arm like a designer accessory, was Vanessa. She wore a red dress that was far too tight and far too short for a courthouse. Her makeup was Instagram perfect. Long dark hair cascaded over her shoulders. She looked young, beautiful, and supremely confident, like she'd already won. When Vanessa saw Sarah, her lips curved into a smirk. She whispered something to James, and they both laughed. Sarah felt Catherine stiffen beside her, but she touched her lawyer's arm gently. "It's fine," she whispered. "Let them enjoy it while they can." James noticed them approaching, and his grin widened. He stepped forward, deliberately blocking their path. "Sarah," he said loudly, projecting so others in the hallway could hear. "Last chance to be reasonable. Sign the settlement my lawyer sent over, and we can avoid this whole embarrassing spectacle. You get $50,000, I keep the house and my business accounts. Clean break. You can rebuild. Start fresh in a nice little apartment somewhere." Vanessa giggled, pressing closer to James's side. $50,000 is generous, honestly. That's like, what, a year's rent? Maybe 2 if you find something in the suburbs. Sarah met James's eyes. She said nothing. Her face was a mask of perfect calm. It unnerved him. He'd expected tears, anger, pleading. The silence was worse. "Cat got your tongue?" James pressed. "You know you can't win this, right? Webb here is the best divorce attorney in Colorado. Your lawyer," he glanced dismissively at Catherine, "is what, some boutique nobody? You're outgunned, Sarah. Just take the money and go." Catherine Reeves smiled. It was the kind of smile sharks have right before they bite. "Mr. Mitchell," she said pleasantly. I'd save your energy for the courtroom. You're going to need it. Martin Webb chuckled. Catherine Reeves. Haven't seen you in family court in a while. Thought you'd retired to wills and estates. I take special cases, Catherine replied coolly, when the injustice is particularly egregious. Good luck, Webb said, though his tone suggested he thought she'd need more than luck. The courtroom clerk appeared. Mitchell versus Mitchell. We're ready for you. The courtroom was smaller than Sarah had imagined. Wood-paneled walls, worn carpet, rows of benches for observers. The Colorado state flag hung limply in one corner. At the front, behind an elevated bench, sat Judge Patricia Harmon. Judge Harmon was in her late 50s, with steel-gray hair and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. She'd been on the bench for 23 years and had seen every trick, every lie, every manipulation divorce lawyers could invent. Be seated, she said curtly as everyone filed in. Martin Webb went first. He stood with practiced confidence, buttoning his jacket as he approached the bench. Your Honor, he began in a smooth, rehearsed voice, this is a straightforward case of equitable distribution. My client, Mr. James Mitchell, is a successful real estate developer. He earns approximately $180,000 annually through his position at Altitude Development Group. He has been the primary breadwinner throughout this 8-year marriage. He paced slightly, a theatrical gesture meant to command attention. The marital home, located in Cherry Creek, was purchased through my client's business acumen and financial planning. While Mrs. Mitchell contributed to household expenses, she has not been employed full-time for the past 3 years, working only part-time remote contracts. Her income has been, frankly, negligible compared to my client's contributions. Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but kept her expression neutral. We propose a division of assets that reflects these realities, Webb continued. Mr. Mitchell retains the marital home, his business accounts, and his vehicle. Mrs. Mitchell receives a one-time settlement of $50,000 and keeps her personal vehicle and jewelry. This is more than fair given her limited financial contribution to the marriage. Webb sat down, looking satisfied. Judge Harmon made notes. Mrs. Mitchell's counsel. Response. Catherine rose slowly. She picked up a leather portfolio from the table and approached the bench with measured steps. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and unwavering. Opposing counsel has painted a convenient picture. But it's a picture built on lies, omissions, and criminal conduct. James shifted in his seat. Webb's smile faltered. Let's start with the house, Catherine said, opening her portfolio. Mr. Webb claims his client purchased the marital home through his own financial planning. That is categorically false. She handed a document to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Harmon. This is a certified bank statement from 7 years ago, showing an $80,000 transfer from Mrs. Mitchell's inheritance account, money left to her by her deceased father, to Mr. Mitchell's account. The transfer occurred 3 days before the house closing. The down payment on the house was exactly $80,000. Judge Harmon examined the document carefully. Under Colorado law, Catherine continued, separate property, including inheritance, remains separate unless commingled. However, when separate funds are used to purchase property, that property, or the proportional value, remains separate. Mrs. Mitchell can trace every dollar of that down payment to her inheritance. The house should be considered her separate property. Webb jumped up. Your Honor, that money was a gift to the marriage. My client and Mrs. Mitchell were a partnership. Sit down, counselor, Judge Harmon said sharply. You'll have your chance to respond. Continue, Ms. Reeves. Catherine smiled. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, let's discuss the mortgage payments. She produced another document. For 7 years, Mrs. Mitchell has been transferring $1,800 monthly to the joint account, believing it covered her half of the mortgage. Mr. Mitchell told her the monthly payment was $3,600. In reality, the mortgage payment is $2,400. For 7 years, Mr. Mitchell has been pocketing $900 monthly of his wife's money. That's $75,600 in theft. James's face went pale. Vanessa looked confused, her smile fading. But the truly disturbing revelations concern Mr. Mitchell's income and spending, Catherine said, her voice taking on a harder edge. She handed over a thick binder. Mr. Webb claims his client earns $180,000 annually. Yet Mr. Mitchell's bank statements show deposits totaling over $350,000 in the past year alone. Where did this extra $170,000 come from? She didn't wait for an answer. The answer, Your Honor, is fraud. Mr. Mitchell has been running a kickback scheme through his position at Altitude Development. He inflates construction costs, bills the company and investors for phantom expenses, and funnels the difference through shell LLCs. We have emails sent from Mr. Mitchell's work account detailing these schemes. We have invoices for work never performed. We have wire transfers to companies that exist only on paper. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Harmon's expression was stone. You're alleging criminal fraud? I'm presenting evidence of criminal fraud, Your Honor. The Colorado Attorney General's office has received copies of all this documentation. But our concern today is the dissipation of marital assets. Catherine pulled out another section of documents. Over the past 18 months, Mr. Mitchell has spent $93,000 on his extramarital affair. Hotel rooms, jewelry, vacations, designer clothing, all paid for with marital funds and money obtained through fraud. She laid out credit card statements marked with highlighter, receipts, Instagram screenshots showing Vanessa wearing items purchased by James. A $12,000 diamond bracelet. A $15,000 trip to Cabo. 5-star hotels. Michelin star restaurants. All while telling his wife they needed to tighten the budget and couldn't afford to visit her sick mother in Kansas. It unnerved him. He'd expected tears, anger, pleading. The silence was worse. Cat got your tongue? James pressed. You know you can't win this, right? Webb here is the best divorce attorney in Colorado. Your lawyer, he glanced dismissively at Catherine. Is what, some boutique nobody? You're outgunned, Sarah. Just take the money and go. Catherine Reeves smiled. It was the kind of smile sharks have right before they bite. Mr. Mitchell, she said pleasantly, I'd save your energy for the courtroom. You're going to need it. Martin Webb chuckled. Catherine Reeves. Haven't seen you in family court in a while. Thought you'd retired to wills and estates. I take special cases, Catherine replied coolly, when the injustice is particularly egregious. Good luck, Webb said, though his tone suggested he thought she'd need more than luck. The courtroom clerk appeared. Mitchell versus Mitchell. We're ready for you. The courtroom was smaller than Sarah had imagined. Wood-paneled walls, worn carpet, rows of benches for observers. The Colorado state flag hung limply in one corner. At the front, behind an elevated bench, sat Judge Patricia Harmon. Judge Harmon was in her late 50s, with steel-gray hair and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. She'd been on the bench for 23 years and had seen every trick, every lie, every manipulation divorce lawyers could invent. Be seated, she said curtly as everyone filed in. Martin Webb went first. He stood with practiced confidence, buttoning his jacket as he approached the bench. Your Honor, he began in a smooth, rehearsed voice, this is a straightforward case of equitable distribution. My client, Mr. James Mitchell, is a successful real estate developer. He earns approximately $180,000 annually through his position at Altitude Development Group. He has been the primary breadwinner throughout this 8-year marriage. He paced slightly, a theatrical gesture meant to command attention. The marital home, located in Cherry Creek, was purchased through my client's business acumen and financial planning. While Mrs. Mitchell contributed to household expenses, she has not been employed full-time for the past 3 years, working only part-time remote contracts. Her income has been, frankly, negligible compared to my client's contributions. Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but kept her expression neutral. We propose a division of assets that reflects these realities, Webb continued. Mr. Mitchell retains the marital home, his business accounts, and his vehicle. Mrs. Mitchell receives a one-time settlement of $50,000 and keeps her personal vehicle and jewelry. This is more than fair given her limited financial contribution to the marriage. Webb sat down, looking satisfied. Judge Harmon made notes. Mrs. Mitchell's counsel. Response. Catherine rose slowly. She picked up a leather portfolio from the table and approached the bench with measured steps. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and unwavering. Opposing counsel has painted a convenient picture. But it's a picture built on lies, omissions, and criminal conduct. James shifted in his seat. Webb's smile faltered. Let's start with the house, Catherine said, opening her portfolio. Mr. Webb claims his client purchased the marital home through his own financial planning. That is categorically false. She handed a document to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Harmon. This is a certified bank statement from 7 years ago, showing an $80,000 transfer from Mrs. Mitchell's inheritance account, money left to her by her deceased father, to Mr. Mitchell's account. The transfer occurred 3 days before the house closing. The down payment on the house was exactly $80,000. Judge Harmon examined the document carefully. Under Colorado law, Catherine continued, separate property, including inheritance, remains separate unless commingled. However, when separate funds are used to purchase property, that property, or the proportional value, remains separate. Mrs. Mitchell can trace every dollar of that down payment to her inheritance. The house should be considered her separate property. Webb jumped up. Your Honor, that money was a gift to the marriage. My client and Mrs. Mitchell were a partnership. Sit down, counselor, Judge Harmon said sharply. You'll have your chance to respond. Continue, Ms. Reeves. Catherine smiled. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, let's discuss the mortgage payments. She produced another document. For 7 years, Mrs. Mitchell has been transferring $1,800 monthly to the joint account, believing it covered her half of the mortgage. Mr. Mitchell told her the monthly payment was $3,600. In reality, the mortgage payment is $2,400. For 7 years, Mr. Mitchell has been pocketing $900 monthly of his wife's money. That's $75,600 in theft. James's face went pale. Vanessa looked confused, her smile fading. But the truly disturbing revelations concern Mr. Mitchell's income and spending, Catherine said, her voice taking on a harder edge. She handed over a thick binder. Mr. Webb claims his client earns $180,000 annually. Yet Mr. Mitchell's bank statements show deposits totaling over $350,000 in the past year alone. Where did this extra $170,000 come from? She didn't wait for an answer. The answer, Your Honor, is fraud. Mr. Mitchell has been running a kickback scheme through his position at Altitude Development. He inflates construction costs, bills the company and investors for phantom expenses, and funnels the difference through shell LLCs. We have emails sent from Mr. Mitchell's work account detailing these schemes. We have invoices for work never performed. We have wire transfers to companies that exist only on paper. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Harmon's expression was stone. You're alleging criminal fraud? I'm presenting evidence of criminal fraud, Your Honor. The Colorado Attorney General's office has received copies of all this documentation. But our concern today is the dissipation of marital assets. Catherine pulled out another section of documents. Over the past 18 months, Mr. Mitchell has spent $93,000 on his extramarital affair. Hotel rooms, jewelry, vacations, designer clothing, all paid for with marital funds and money obtained through fraud. She laid out credit card statements marked with highlighter, receipts, Instagram screenshots showing Vanessa wearing items purchased by James. A $12,000 diamond bracelet. A $15,000 trip to Cabo. 5-star hotels. Michelin star restaurants. All while telling his wife they needed to tighten the budget and couldn't afford to visit her sick mother in Kansas. Vanessa's face flushed red. She tried to shrink down in her seat, suddenly aware that dozens of eyes were on her. And there's more, Catherine said. Mr. Mitchell has a gambling problem. She produced another stack of papers. Online sports betting. Offshore casino accounts. In the past 2 years, Mr. Mitchell has gambled away $127,000. More than his annual legitimate salary. Judge Harmon flipped through the documents, her expression growing darker with each page. Your Honor, Catherine said, her voice ringing with righteous anger. This is not a case of equitable distribution between equal partners. This is a case of systematic theft, fraud, and betrayal. Mrs. Mitchell worked. She contributed. She trusted. And she was robbed of her inheritance, her earnings, and her future by a man who now has the audacity to offer her $50,000 and call it generous. She turned and looked directly at James. We're not here to negotiate. We're here for justice. Catherine returned to her seat. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Judge Harmon removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. When she spoke, her voice could have cut glass. Mr. Webb, does your client wish to respond to these allegations? Martin Webb looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. He conferred urgently with James in harsh whispers. James was sweating now, his confident smile completely gone. Webb stood shakily. Your Honor, we were not aware of the extent of this documentation. We may need to request a continuance. Denied, Judge Harmon said flatly. Your client came here expecting an easy win. He brought his mistress to intimidate his wife. He offered an insulting settlement. Now he gets to face the consequences. Mr. Mitchell, stand up. James stood slowly, his hands trembling. Did you use your wife's inheritance for the down payment on your house? Judge Harmon demanded. Yes, but did you lie to her about the mortgage amount and pocket the difference? James's mouth opened and closed. It was complicated. Yes or no, Mr. Mitchell? Yes, he whispered. Did you spend marital funds on an extramarital affair? A long pause. Yes. Did you engage in fraudulent business practices to hide income from your wife and the IRS? James looked at his lawyer desperately. Webb gave a tiny shake of his head, but it was too late. I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Too late, Judge Harmon said coldly. You already answered. Bailiff, note that the respondent admits to the material facts of dissipation. She turned to her clerk. I'm ready to rule. Judge Harmon didn't need to retire to her chambers. She'd seen enough. Her face was set in stone as she began to speak, and each word landed like a gavel strike. I've been on this bench for 23 years, she began, her voice cutting through the courtroom's silence like a blade. I've seen liars, cheats, and manipulators of every variety. But rarely have I seen such a comprehensive pattern of deception, theft, and moral bankruptcy as what Mr. Mitchell has demonstrated here today. James's hands gripped the table in front of him. His knuckles went white. The evidence presented by Mrs. Mitchell's counsel is not only compelling, it is irrefutable. Bank statements don't lie. Emails don't lie. Transaction records don't lie. Mr. Mitchell, however, has built his entire life on lies. Judge Harmon put her glasses back on and picked up her notes. Let's address the assets one by one, and let me be crystal clear about how this court views each claim. She looked directly at James, her gaze unwavering. First, the marital home. The court finds that the $80,000 down payment came exclusively from Mrs. Mitchell's inheritance from her deceased father. This is separate property under Colorado law. Furthermore, the court finds that Mrs. Mitchell has been defrauded regarding the mortgage payments, overpaying by $900 monthly for 7 years. Sarah felt Catherine's hand briefly touch her arm. A small gesture of victory. The court hereby awards the marital home at 2847 Elm Ridge Drive to Mrs. Sarah Mitchell as her sole and separate property. Mr. Mitchell has 30 days to vacate the premises and remove his personal belongings. The title will be transferred to Mrs. Mitchell's name exclusively, free and clear of any claims by Mr. Mitchell. James made a choking sound. Vanessa gasped audibly from her seat. Second, Judge Harmon continued, her voice even harder now, the dissipation of marital assets. The court finds that Mr. Mitchell willfully and maliciously squandered marital funds on gambling, totaling $127,000 over 2 years. He also spent $93,000 on an extramarital affair. The total dissipation is $220,000. She paused, letting that number sink in. Under Colorado's equitable distribution laws, when one spouse dissipates marital assets through gambling, affairs, or other wasteful conduct, the court can award the wronged spouse compensation. Mrs. Mitchell is entitled to be made whole. Therefore, Mr. Mitchell is ordered to pay Mrs. Mitchell $110,000, representing half of the dissipated assets, within 90 days. If he fails to pay, a lien will be placed on any property he owns, and his wages will be garnished. Martin Webb put his head in his hands. James looked like he might vomit. Third, the fraudulently obtained income. Mr. Mitchell has admitted to hiding income through illegal business schemes. While this court does not have criminal jurisdiction, I am forwarding all evidence to the Colorado Attorney General and the IRS. However, for purposes of this divorce, the court finds that the undisclosed income of approximately $170,000 annually constitutes marital property subject to division. Judge Harmon's expression was pitiless. Mr. Mitchell maintained secret accounts funded by fraud. Mrs. Mitchell had no knowledge of or participation in this fraud. The court orders Mr. Mitchell to provide a full accounting of all offshore accounts, shell company accounts, and hidden assets within 14 days. Any accounts discovered will be divided equally with Mrs. Mitchell, after taxes and restitution to defrauded parties. Catherine leaned over and whispered to Sarah, "She's eviscerating him." Fourth, the $75,600 Mr. Mitchell stole from his wife through false representations about the mortgage. This is not dissipation, this is theft. Mr. Mitchell will repay this amount in full to Mrs. Mitchell within 60 days. Judge Harmon set down her notes and removed her glasses again. When she spoke next, Her voice carried the weight of personal disgust. "Mr. Mitchell, I want to be very clear about something. You came into my courtroom today expecting to rob your wife of her home, her security, and her dignity. You brought your mistress," she glanced at Vanessa with barely concealed contempt, "to humiliate a woman who trusted you, who supported you, who built a life with you." James couldn't meet her eyes. "You lied about your income. You stole your wife's inheritance. You gambled away 6 figures of marital money. You spent lavishly on an affair while telling your wife you couldn't afford to help her sick mother. And then you had the audacity to offer her $50,000 and act like you were being generous." The judge's voice dropped to something even more dangerous, quiet fury. "This court does not reward thieves and liars. This court will not enable financial abuse. And this court will not allow a man who has committed fraud, theft, and systematic betrayal to profit from his misconduct." She picked up her gavel. "The court's ruling is as follows. Mrs. Sarah Mitchell is awarded the marital home free and clear. Mr. Mitchell is ordered to pay Mrs. Mitchell a total of $185,600 in compensatory damages within 90 days. Mr. Mitchell is responsible for all marital debts including credit cards and his vehicle loan. Mrs. Mitchell retains her vehicle and all personal property free of any claims." Judge Harmon looked directly at James one final time. "Mr. Mitchell, you walked in here thinking you were clever. You're not clever. You're a common criminal who got caught by someone smarter, more patient, and more thorough than you could ever imagine. I suggest you retain a good criminal defense attorney, because I suspect you'll need one shortly." She brought the gavel down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo forever. "This court is adjourned." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Sarah sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. She'd won. Not just won, she'd obliterated him. Catherine was already gathering documents, her face showing the closest thing to joy Sarah had seen from the normally stoic attorney. "We did it," Catherine said quietly. "Complete victory." Sarah turned to look at James. He sat slumped in his chair, staring at nothing. His expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume on a broken man. Martin Webb was already packing his briefcase, clearly eager to distance himself from this disaster. Vanessa had gone pale, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. She stood up shakily and hurried toward the courtroom doors, her heels clicking frantically on the floor. But James couldn't move. He was paralyzed by the magnitude of his loss. Sarah stood, smoothing her suit jacket. She walked past his table on her way out. For just a moment, she paused. "You should have just been honest, James," she said quietly, almost gently. "That's all I ever wanted. Honesty." Then she walked out into the hallway. The courthouse hallway was bustling with people, but Sarah barely noticed them. She felt like she was walking through a dream, or perhaps waking from a nightmare. Catherine walked beside her, professional but pleased. "I need to file some paperwork with the clerk, but Sarah, that was one of the most satisfying cases of my career." Judge Harmon doesn't usually go that hard, but she clearly despised him. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now, Mr. Mitchell has 90 days to come up with $185,600 or face liens and garnishment. He has 30 days to vacate your home. And based on what the judge said about forwarding evidence to the AG, I'd expect criminal charges within 6 months. Wire fraud, embezzlement, possibly tax evasion. He's looking at serious prison time if convicted." Sarah felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. Not for James, he'd earned everything coming to him. But for the years she'd lost, the trust that had been shattered, the version of herself that had believed in their marriage. "You did the right thing," Catherine said, reading her expression. "He would have destroyed you financially and never looked back. You protected yourself. That's not revenge. That's justice." Sarah nodded. "Thank you, Catherine. For everything. My pleasure. And Sarah, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. What you did, that investigation, that documentation, most people don't have that kind of discipline. You should be proud." They shook hands, and Catherine headed back toward the clerk's office. Sarah walked toward the elevator, ready to leave this building and this chapter behind her. But as she waited for the elevator, she heard rapid footsteps behind her. "Sarah! Sarah, wait!" She turned. Vanessa was running toward her, her red dress completely inappropriate for running, her heels clicking dangerously. Sarah's finger hovered over the elevator call button as Vanessa caught up, slightly out of breath. "What do you want, Vanessa?" Sarah asked tiredly. Up close, without the confidence and bravado, Vanessa looked younger. More uncertain. The Instagram goddess veneer had cracked, revealing someone who was scared and out of her depth. I need to know, Vanessa said, her voice shaking. Did he ever actually love me? Or was I just a thing to him? Like the watches and the cars? Sarah studied her for a moment. She could have been cruel, could have twisted the knife. But looking at this young woman, only 28, still believing that diamonds meant love and attention meant commitment, she felt something closer to pity. Vanessa, Sarah said softly, James doesn't love anyone but himself. He loved what you represented. Youth, excitement, the fantasy that he was still the man he imagined himself to be. But love? Real love? That requires honesty, sacrifice, commitment. James isn't capable of that. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, her carefully applied mascara beginning to run. He told me you were cold, she whispered. That you didn't understand him. That you'd grown apart, and the marriage was already over. That's what cheaters always say, Sarah replied. It makes them feel better about what they're doing. But Vanessa, you need to understand something. When a man cheats with you, he'll cheat on you. You were never special to him. You were just convenient. The elevator arrived with a ding. Sarah stepped inside. He's broke now, Vanessa said desperately. He called me from the bathroom. He has nothing. The company is investigating him. He might go to jail. What am I supposed to do? Sarah held the elevator door. You're 28 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. My advice? Find someone who's actually available. Build something real. And maybe don't post quite so much evidence of your affairs on Instagram. She let the door close on Vanessa's stunned face. Outside the courthouse, the Denver sun was brilliant and warm. Sarah tilted her face up to it, feeling the heat on her skin. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. Hi, Mom, she said when the call connected. Yes, it's over. I got the house. I got everything. She paused, listening to her mother's excited voice. No, I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm free. They talked for a few minutes before Sarah promised to come visit that weekend. When she hung up, she stood on the courthouse steps and just breathed. Her phone buzzed with a text. It was from her colleague at work. How'd it go? Sarah typed back. I won. I'll tell you everything Monday. But right now, I'm going to do something I haven't done in months. I'm going to enjoy my day. She walked to her car, her reliable Honda that she'd bought with her own money before she ever met James. She drove not toward the house in Cherry Creek, but toward downtown. She parked near a boutique spa she'd always wanted to try but James had said was too expensive. Do you have any appointments available? She asked at the front desk. We have a luxury package available right now, actually. 90-minute massage, facial, and champagne. It's $350. Sarah smiled. Perfect. I'll take it. For the next 2 hours, Sarah let herself be pampered. She let the tension drain from her muscles. She let someone else take care of her for once. And when she looked at herself in the mirror afterward, refreshed, glowing, genuinely smiling, she saw someone new. Not the grieving wife. Not the betrayed victim. Not even the avenging warrior. Just Sarah. Whole and free. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the living room of her house, legally and completely, and surveyed the changes. The furniture James had picked out was gone, donated or sold. The walls had been repainted from the cold gray he'd insisted on to warm, inviting colors. The master bedroom was redecorated entirely. New bedding, new curtains, new everything. No trace of him remained. She'd turned his home office into a yoga studio. The dining room where he'd told her he wanted a divorce was now a cozy reading nook filled with plants and soft lighting. The house felt different. Lighter. Like it could finally breathe. Sarah had received the first payment from James, extracted through wage garnishment after he predictably failed to pay voluntarily. The criminal investigation was ongoing. His former company had filed a civil suit against him. He was living in a cheap apartment in Aurora and working at a retail store, his career in real estate development permanently destroyed. Vanessa had unfollowed him on all social media within 2 weeks of the divorce and was now posting pictures with a new boyfriend, a professional athlete, naturally. As for Sarah, she'd been promoted to senior director of data analytics at her company. The skills she'd used to investigate James, the attention to detail, the analytical thinking, the patience, had impressed her bosses when they learned about it. She'd also started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but she'd gone on a few promising coffee dates. She was taking it slow, trusting her instincts, protecting her heart, but not closing it off. Her doorbell rang. Sarah opened it to find Catherine Reeves standing there with a bottle of wine and a smile. "I was in the neighborhood," Catherine said. "Thought I'd see how you're settling in." "Come in," Sarah said warmly. They sat in the redecorated living room, glasses of wine in hand, and talked. About the case. About life. About new beginnings. "Have you heard about James?" Catherine asked. "Only what's public record," Sarah replied. "The criminal charges, the company lawsuit. I try not to follow it too closely." "Smart," Catherine nodded. "Though I should tell you, the AG is likely to offer him a plea deal. 7 to 10 years if he cooperates and provides information on the broader scheme. His lawyer is apparently begging him to take it." Sarah sipped her wine. "I hope he takes it. Not because I want him to suffer, but because he needs to face consequences. Maybe prison will give him time to figure out who he actually is when he's not lying." "That's a remarkably mature perspective," Catherine observed. "I spent too much energy on anger," Sarah said. "It was necessary for a while. It fueled me through the investigation, through the trial. But I don't want to carry it forever. He doesn't deserve that much space in my life." They talked until the sun set, until the bottle was empty and the conversation had wandered from legal matters to life, dreams, and second chances. When Catherine left, Sarah stood in her doorway and watched the older woman walk to her car. She thought about how one person, one good, fierce, principled person, could change everything. How Catherine had fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. How she'd seen Sarah not as a victim, but as someone worthy of justice. Sarah closed the door and locked it. Her door. Her house. Her life. She walked through the rooms, turning off lights, feeling the peace that came from being exactly where she belonged. In the master bathroom, she brushed her teeth and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was different from the one who'd discovered that receipt in James's jacket 6 months ago. Stronger. Wiser. Battle-scarred but not broken. "You did it," she whispered to her reflection. "You survived. You fought. You won." And tomorrow, she'd wake up in her own home, debt-free and independent, ready to build whatever life she chose. A life based on truth, not lies. On self-respect, not self-sacrifice. The phone on her nightstand buzzed with a text from a friend. "Dinner this weekend? There's someone I want you to meet." Sarah smiled and typed back, "Sure. I'm ready." And she was. So that's Sarah's story. A woman who trusted, who was betrayed, but who refused to be a victim. She used her skills, her intelligence, and her patience to expose the truth and reclaim her life. James lost everything: his house, his career, his reputation, and soon his freedom. All because he underestimated the quiet woman who kept the books and thought she wouldn't fight back. But here's the real lesson: documentation is everything. Sarah didn't just get emotional, she got evidence. Bank statements, emails, receipts, screenshots. She built a case that couldn't be disputed or denied. And when the moment came, she presented it with precision that left no room for doubt. If you're in a situation where you suspect betrayal, where something doesn't add up, where your trust is being violated, start documenting. Not for revenge, but for protection. Because the truth has power, but only if you can prove it. Before we wrap up, I have a question for you. Are you watching this from your living room in New York? From a cafe in London? From your bedroom in Tokyo? Drop your location and the current time in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories reach around the world. And if this story resonated with you, if Sarah's journey gave you hope or inspiration or just satisfaction that justice was served, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. We share stories like this every single week. Stories about people who refused to be victims, who fought back, who reclaimed their power. Smash that like button to help this story reach people who need to hear it. And share this with someone who might need the reminder that they're stronger than they think, that documentation is protection, and that liars always, eventually, get caught. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you're stronger than you know, smarter than they think, and you deserve better than lies. I'll see you in the next story.